After 13 weeks of mass demonstrations, the crackdown takes on a darker shade. For the first time, police fired water cannons loaded with blue dye, staining frontline protesters and promising to prosecute them. Authorities had warned Hong Kong residents not to participate in the banned demonstrations. Thousands defied them.
The purpose of hitting the streets today is to tell the government you can't scare us this way. We also have to restate our main demands because they've never responded to them.
Back on the street, prominent activist Joshua Wong, just a day after being arrested, then released.
Compared to activists being threatened by police, being beaten by those police force, with those cops, the price I pay is really small. So I have no reason to give up.
It began with a hymn, demonstrators calling their gathering a religious meeting in an attempt to circumvent the ban on protests. The chorus grew louder as thousands joined in a peaceful march. But the tune changed as the scene turned chaotic, with tear gas from police, firebombs from protesters, and by night, burning barricades blocking the streets. This weekend marks the 5th anniversary of China's decision not to allow full democratic elections in Hong Kong. Yet the flames of resistance burn on.
And joining me now from Hong Kong is DW correspondent Charlotte Chelson-Pill. Charlotte, protesters have been on the move all day. What's the latest where you are right now?
Well, at the moment, we're in the busy shopping district, Causeway Bay. During the day, this is bustling. Tonight, though, again, it is the scene of carnage once more. At the moment, there is a huge police presence, as I'm sure you can see behind me. A short time ago, police deployed tear gas at large amounts of protesters who'd moved over here, many of them setting up barricades, some of those barricades being set alight. Police then charged through and the protesters were largely dispersed. Since then, no, we've seen a number of arrests of the stragglers, of those protesters who were left behind. They were bundled into police vans. What we're hearing is those protesters are now moving on to another location. This is very much a cat and mouse game, Carl, that's been repeated not just tonight, but throughout these 13 weeks. Protesters gather in one place, then they move on and police follow them. Tear gas in multiple different locations. To be clear, what is happening in Hong Kong is not in isolated places. This is somewhere that is extremely widespread.
Charlotte, we were just seeing pictures there of those fires that were set in the streets that you mentioned. Is this a sign, do you think, that protesters are now more willing to use violent tactics than they were before?
Well, we've seen protesters on the front lines using fire multiple times in the past. In recent weeks, we've seen them throwing Molotov cocktails, fire projectiles, essentially, at police. That's something that we saw again today. We have also seen them setting light to bins in the streets. That's something we've seen again today. But there have been, it seems, many more this evening as protesters do try and build up those barricades to try and prevent the police from getting closer to them, it would seem. This is potentially, you could see this as an escalation in violence on both sides. Police today using that water cannon once again. That's the second time within 13 weeks, the last time being last Sunday. But for the first time, that blue dye was used by police as well. Crucially, people think to mark, to identify those protesters who were on the front line so that they can be found later and possibly arrested.
Today's protests come a day after more activists were arrested, but that doesn't seem to have deterred most protesters there in the streets.
That's right. A number of high-profile activists were arrested, as well as legislators yesterday in a big sweep, unprecedented in this movement so far. Of course, 900 people have been arrested over the last 13 weeks. But the fact that these people who were arrested yesterday were so high-profile did alarm a lot of protesters. Nevertheless, they have been out on the streets today very peacefully. Earlier on today, marching defiant in the face of the threat of arrest, something that police have said that they do face. This is, after all, an unauthorized protest. Police have repeatedly made clear that anyone who is on the streets today is acting illegally. Nevertheless, a lot of people on the streets today, they told us that while they fear repercussions from authorities, what they fear more is what they see as the encroachment from Beijing on their rights here in Hong Kong.
DW's Charlotte Chelsom-Pill in Hong Kong for us. Thank you very much.